Ladies and gentlemen, it's exactly 2:45 on the clock. We will be kicking off our second session. I hope you got yourself some refreshments and looking forward to this session. So just a reminder, we have 4 speakers lined up until we call it a day at 6:30, at 4:30. Our next speaker will be Nevelyn Moodley. Can I please ask for the next slide? So Nevelyn is a partner at BDO and is also the head of financial services advisory and digital assets lead for Africa and the Middle East. Over to you, Nevelyn.
Thank you, Rudolph, and good afternoon to everyone. I promised to bring some big energy into the session post-tea. It's much better presenting now as opposed to presenting post-lunch. So by way of introduction, my name is Nevelyn Moodley. Thank you for the quick introduction there, Rudolph. I've got a keen interest in all things emerging technology related. So as you can imagine, I've been quite involved with artificial intelligence over the last 2 years and have been spending a lot of time in all the different avenues and aspects of emerging technologies. And if we do get a little bit of time, I will share with you some examples of where artificial intelligence and other technologies such as blockchain, augmented reality, all come together and fit together into something that we call the singularity, which is a lot of the stuff that we speak to clients about when it comes to what does exponential technologies all coming together look like in the future. So to just get us going, I'm going to just ask Rudolph to move us to the next slide. There we go. So for those of you who've ever been to a singularity conference, I'll explain to you very quickly what the singularity is. But the singularity is effectively the avenue where all of the emerging technologies in the world all collide and combine together, where effectively a humanoid or a bot or the level of technology gets to a place where it's smarter, where if you put all the technologies together, it's at a space where all the technologies together is smarter than the smartest human available, right? Now, the singularity has been spoken about for the last 20 or 25 years, and we're probably getting closer to the singularity as we know it. But at any singularity conference that you go to, so the Singularity University, which is the disruption university of the world, I've been lucky enough to go for a lot of their lectures and a lot of their presentations in South Africa and both globally. And one of the key things that comes up is that we need to accept that in the world as we know it now, the world is changing on a curve that's going up, which means it's changing at an increasing rate. So what this means for everyone in the room, and I'll use a very general example for everyone, just so that everyone can understand what this means, is if you go back to the previous generation, or even generation before that, most of them will tell you there were 2 big technological shifts in their life that took place. And those 2 technological shifts was first the introduction of systems, and secondly, probably the introduction of cell phones as the 2 major changes that we've seen. And probably around the time of COVID coming in, we saw the world of moving online and work from anywhere, etc., was probably the 3rd change, but the previous generation didn't really feel that per se. Now, what this exponential technology talks about is that we probably at the moment in planet Earth on number 2 on the graph at the moment. But you can see that graph is starting to become steeper and steeper. So what we're saying is if the previous generation went through 2 large changes in their entire lifetime, a professional starting their career today is probably going to go through at least 8 or 12 changes, the equivalent of systems and cell phones coming into their life, which means as humans, probably our most important aspect that we need to work on is our ability to be adaptable. And I'll talk about this concept throughout the presentation around something called your adaptable quotient. So we all talk about IQ, EQ. I'm going to talk a little bit about something called AQ today. And I think it's very exciting. So maybe to bring it back, for guys think I'm probably some crazy person talking about technology. So to just bring it back a little bit to audit is I think audit's going to go through a similar change. And I think whether we embrace it or not is going to be an interesting challenge for the profession as a whole. But I think what's definitely going to happen is if you look at audit from 20 years ago, maybe we're at the scale of 1 and we're going to move to 2, which is still a drastic change. And the world might be moving from a 2 to a 3. So I think for today's presentation, I just want us all to have an appreciation of the fact that we are in an exponential technology world that we live in at the moment. And the rate of change and the speed at which things are going to change going forward is going to be at rates that no one who's ever inhabited planet Earth is ever going to see. And we've got two options as human beings, or even as auditors, if we're going to bring it closer. One is we either accept the change and we embrace it and we try and make the most of it, or two, we try and fight the change and we'll probably get left behind in any ways. So I think this graph is just a nice starting point for us just to illustrate that we are in an exponential technology world that we live in at the moment. For people like me, really exciting time to be alive. We can move to the next slide, Rudolph. Okay, so what I did was I spend a lot of time with, yeah, I do look after a few audit clients, but I do spend the most of my time focused on advisory clients. And it gives me a great time to go and poll stakeholders and actually ask them. So you pay a lot of money for your audits that you do at the moment. If you could put a wish list together, which is what any sort of company does when they want to launch a new product. So if we're saying the product is audit, what would be the wish list for capital markets that they would have for this product that they buy called audit, right? And the first thing everyone always says to me is closer to real-time assurance. They said, by the time you finalize your audit report, it's often 18 months after the fact, or maybe 6 months after year end, or 3 months after year end. But you're then sitting in a position where the information, if you look at the first month that you audited, is already 15 months too late. So the closer to real-time assurance is definitely something that capital markets are asking for. And yeah, these were just insights. So what I've done is, in order to come up with that list, we've polled about 15 to 20 different people of influence across organizations in South Africa and said, forget about the way auditing is done at the moment. If you had to redesign this product, what would it look like? So the second one was assurance on forward-looking data. So they said there's a lot of focus on what's happened in the past. Can you give us a view in terms of what will happen forward? Do you have models that can predict what's going to happen forward? And can you give us an assurance view on what management's view is? Now, again, I'll bring it closer to everyone. Going concern already has a little bit of it, but they're saying we're looking for more. We want to know more. Assurance over inputs to non-financial information. So non-financial information in the world of ESG specifically is becoming absolutely fundamentally critical. And I think the profession's already taking a stance in the right direction to predict where it is. And one of the clients actually said to me, can you tell me whether this specific oil and gas company will still be around in 10 years' time, knowing what we know about regulation at the moment and knowing what we know about where the world is moving? Can you at least give me a view that someone's put a model together, has put inputs into it, and got to a place where they're actually getting the answers? So I found that to be quite interesting. Then we've got something called AI assurance. Again, newly, the nice thing about my role and what I do is I can just make up acronyms and buzzwords because we need to just move as fast as the technology is moving. But if you think about it, most organizations at the moment are introducing AI. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about AI agents as we're going along, but no one's really assured or said this is what the standard or the baseline is to assure if artificial intelligence is involved in anything financial information related or non-financial information related. So most organizations said, listen, we need to feel a little bit comfortable that if AI is being used, there's some assurance over the baseline of AI so that we can be assured if we're seeing these big cost to income ratio movements or seeing growths in revenue, that there is some assurance over the AI that's making it happen. And then ESG, a lot of focus around ESG to say, ESG is often given a view from a backward-looking perspective, whereas if you look at the real-time view, it's maybe very different. And then future-focused, as the example I gave, to say, listen, what's going to happen going forward if this organization doesn't change? Flag more of those risks for me. And look, algorithmic models as an example. It's been used in financial services for a very long time, but they're now starting to find their way into other types of industries as well. And someone needs to actually validate that these algorithmic models are actually doing what they're meant to do. The inputs are coming through. And generally, if I sort of summarize all of the different points that I've been talking about, a stronger view and more responsibility needs to be put on giving a view into the future. Because everyone says we sort of know what's happened in the past, but we need more from the profession in terms of what's going to happen into the future, which again, everyone that has an audit pen in their hand and is signing financials will probably feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think what we need to appreciate here is the user or the buyer of this product called audit. This is what they are looking for into the future. And you'll see I put a little piece at the bottom. So I just did a very simple ChatGPT prompt, and I'll tell you what it came up with. It says, I don't just want you to audit the past. I want you to audit the future. I want confidence in systems, algorithms, and decisions made by AI. I want trust in real time. If you don't give me that, someone else will. The clock is ticking. I need a chief trust officer. So I'm going to build on that concept as I'm talking through to you today. But that's a very powerful statement when I polled AI in terms of what do you think the profession needs to do to meet these requirements. And I think the important thing is that, is the profession disruption proof? Probably with the regulatory pressures in place, probably we are a little bit disruption proof. But I actually spoke to 2 or 3 different executives, well, some from Google and some from Microsoft. And the question I asked them was, why have you guys not tried to disrupt the auditing profession? And the answer they came back with was, listen, the margins in your space are a bit low at the moment, but it's quite low down our wish list at the moment. So again, probably something good that disruption won't come now. That being said, it doesn't mean it's completely disruption proof into the future. And I think that's what we need to keep our eye open is, if trust was the commodity that we are providing, how do we use AI to increase that commodity and make it more valuable to the users, which are capital markets going forward? Yeah, just a penny for your thoughts as we're going along. Rudolf, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so if you think about it, we've got this concept here called the Chief Trust Officer. And the general view, again, this was from polling about 10 to 15 different stakeholders and asking them for their views, as well as assisting some of the master's students who are doing their masters in auditing in terms of their views on the current audit process that's come out. So some of their research, I've just taken it and summarized it for you. So effectively, the general view is that the audit as we know it today, it is digitally moving, it is getting digitally enabled. However, they feel as a general concept with the rate at which technology is moving is that the product we call audit as we know it today, in their view, which is about just over 60% of the participants, believe that it's currently on life support. So what does that mean? It means that we need to make changes in order to get trust. And now we've got this lovely technology called artificial intelligence. How do we take artificial intelligence, wrap it up a little bit into this process that we call audit, and how do we look at what does becoming a chief trust officer to our clients mean? Now, again, you're going to say, Nev, you know what, we need to be independent, we can't be part of the client, but I'm not saying we need to be part of the client. I'm saying the client is looking to us to say, what does a chief trust officer look like? The current product as you have it's on life support. If we need to move to a space where we have a chief trust officer, what are the changes and to what level will the enablement take place as a result of artificial intelligence? And what does this new product look like? How do we govern it? How do we regulate it? And how do we move with the times? Well, more importantly, to provide what our stakeholders are asking of us. And secondly, to say, how do we make sure that we remain disruption proof as a profession as well? So keep this concept of chief trust officer in your head, and it's going to make a lot more sense as I'm moving through. Rudolf, we can move through to the next slide. Okay, so look, I grew up in a time when, I promise you I'm not that old, but I grew up in a time where a big part of my career was spent on how do we move away from sample-based audits to maximum assurance or 100% audits, right? So I got told, no, you can't use that word 100%, rather use the word maximum assurance. So hence the slide is called maximum assurance. But I think majority of the clients or majority of the audits that I'm involved in and involved with a whole host of different companies as well. One of the things that's always seen as a differentiator is the areas where you've been able to test 100% or be able to use data and analytics. Now, it doesn't help that the profession at the moment, I think we spend about 5% of our money building technology and the other 95% marketing the technology. I'm sure there'll be a few people who have some views on that, very interested to hear. But this will be a non-negotiable. We cannot actually go and sample anything into the future because the public and the perception that exists out there is not that we are testing samples. And again, it's one of the things around what the public's expectation and what capital markets expectation is versus what we actually do. So we know, for example, sampling is taking place today in many instances, but the audit of the future is definitely one that needs maximum assurance. And no, not in 50 years' time, but with the technology at our helm at the moment, we are definitely more than capable of doing an audit of 100%. And this is going to be a non-negotiable. So it's not going to be like, I mean, no one goes and says to your client at the moment, listen, we did our audit in compliance with the standards. It's taken as a given. You would need to go and say, listen, I'm going to do 100% audit. So Rudolf, we can move to the next slide. Oh, this was interesting. This is a real advert that I picked up from you. Artisans won't complain about work-life balance. The era of AI employees is, yeah. So these AI agents, so I've started building AI auditors or AI agents in order to do different things. I'll show you some examples shortly of some of the ones that I've built. Again, I've built them in a separate environment outside of our audit space, just as from an experience perspective in terms of how they do it. We've even used fake data on them just to see how it would work. And these AI agents are quite incredible. It's a 24-hour auditor. It can audit the same. I've actually built 2 AI agents. AI agent does the preparing, AI agent 2 does the reviewing, and I compare the answers. If the 2 are the same, I say pretty much it's the same. If there's differences, I then focus my attention there. And you can actually embed these agents in your client's environment so they can continuously audit payroll, procurement, whatever you're doing. And yeah, they never ever take sick leave, I promise you. And they're a little bit more less hurtful on the codes that we have because they don't have to charge. It's just a capital expenditure as opposed to a timesheet. That's just a joke for all of you that do work management. But effectively, these agents can work 24/7, 365, and they do a lot of the work, actually. It's been difficult for me. I mean, I've been looking at work that first years and second years do. I think we're getting to a place where in 3 or 4 years' time, with the right level of investment and collaboration in the industry, a lot of that work can be moved to AI agents to actually start teaching people how to think again. Rudolf, we can move to the next slide. Okay. And this is something, so these little humans over here, I've called them AI agents, but in order to take our steps into the future, right, all of these agents can be taken with all systems moving into cloud-based systems. These agents, which can be auditor agents, you can have methodologies and frameworks on how to introduce these agents into your client's ERP systems. They'd be able to continuously audit. And based on the little bit of work that I've done so far, I think across 60 to 70% of your audit procedures that are sitting over there, these agents would be capable of continuously doing the audits and even giving a rough audit report on a monthly basis if you really needed to as well. So I think I just wanted to show this as sort of a little illustration of what the future and what the world looks like. And on that note, I'm just going to move through to the last slide that I've got, just around what's most important in the industry. So I just put this, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but I've just put audit standards for you to show you how AI agents can use them. Happy to take any questions on them. And then more importantly, this is a very important slide. You know, everyone's so focused on the technology, but I promise you, ChatGPT or Claude, as we know it today, with the nice wrapper around protection and privacy, there's the world's best technology available to all the audit firms to do what they need to do. However, you are not going to win this battle with AI or even make progress with AI, because I promise you, everyone in the room here, you guys probably have the highest IQs in the country. EQ, some of you are better than others, I get told all the time. But the ones who will be successful are the ones who give their people the chance to have adaptability. So what this actually means for everyone is, your adaptability quotient quite simply goes like this. It's your ability to unlearn everything that you've learned and learn something brand new. So lecturers hate it when I presented at university. They said, are you telling my students to forget what we learned this year? I'm like, no, I'm just trying to teach them a concept. So the ones who go to the University of YouTube and learn and pick up the faster, and if we can find a way to embed in our people and embed in the profession, how do we promote adaptability as the key skill in human beings? We will win at whatever we decide to do in the space. So I think the days IQ and EQ, we take it for granted. Our AQ was actually what's going to determine how successful we're going to be in rolling out the AI revolution that we currently find ourselves in. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure presenting to you today. And I just put a little piece over here. You can see this is what audit teams of the future are going to look like, and adaptability, right? So we need to be in a position where accountants, data scientists, IT auditors, AI agents, ESG people, and forensics people are just as important as everyone else. And if we can get these skills together, get AI as the wrapper that brings us together to actually go and make a difference out there, I think we can change this profession, and we can actually grow up and become the chief trust officers that the profession wants us to be. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll open for some questions.
Well, thank you very much, Nevelin. I can see you got our audience excited. I can see the emojis. Thank you so much for that. So, Nevelin, I like how you talk about how artificial intelligence can improve the way we conduct our audits so that the audits can talk to the needs of the users of the audit report, which is capital markets, as you mentioned. And so as an auditor myself, also when I engage with the older generation of auditors and I ask, what was the biggest change? Because change has been the main thing throughout your presentation. When I ask the previous generation, the older generation of auditors, what was the biggest change during their time? And they mentioned how we've moved from a paper-based audit to a now fully computerized one. And I must say that I'm fascinated by predictions about how audit will look like in ensuring that we meet the needs of the users of the audit report. So, Nevelin, given the pace at which this application's AI is evolving and how it's rapidly becoming accessible to everyone, and given that, I mean, AI, it was traditionally seen as something that was could only be pursued by the bigger and the larger network firms, do you think that the accessibility of AI applications and solutions might actually level the playing field and bring the smaller firms, the SMP market, on board in terms of technology and assurance services?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll tell you one that actually really excites me, because I genuinely believe the state of AI technology, again, people will get very upset with my view. So I must share that this is my personal view. And the view goes like this. All of the audit firms, no one's actually going and building their own LLM. So that's large language models. They're either using Claude. I've seen some Claude. I've seen some, most of them are using OpenAI, right? Or ChatGPT, which is a Microsoft product. So as long as we've got Microsoft and we're on Teams, simple call or subscription means you can open it up and you can very quickly on Microsoft Azure build it up. So having spoken to different people globally, it seems that most of the budgets are spent on marketing. I'd say 5% on technology, 95% on marketing. That's why some people make a bigger noise than others. But if you think about this AI technology, if it's embedded in every auditor across the world or across South Africa as a start, it's going to make the capability of the different auditor exactly the same. Your strength is going to be in your adaptability. So I think it's really going to level up the profession quite a bit, because no one needs to go and invest, because the biggest expense on AI is actually on the LLM. So from a technology perspective purely, but then what's going to be the differentiator is how you build that AI into your processes and how you build that AI into your people to make them adaptable, as I mentioned earlier. So I think definitely AI's got the opportunity and the benefit of being able to level the playing field. And you're going to probably have new competitors entering the market who are going to be able to provide an exceptional product out to the market. And key to this is how quick can the regulation move to enable it? And I think so far from speaking to some of the regulation setters, well, both South Africa and abroad, they're definitely saying, how do we use technology as a basis to make the profession more competitive? So, Rudolf, to answer your question simply is, I think that big technology cost is purely a marketing cost, but purely from a pure technology and from a purist technology at heart, I think it's going to really start leveling the playing field, where even the little small audit firm with 1 or 2 people is going to have the capability of having a piece of technology at their disposal that maybe previously only a firm that had more than 500,000 people was able to have. So I think that's definitely going to be a leveler for the auditing and accounting profession as a whole.
Thank you very much, Nevelin. Thanks for the great presentation. We are now going to move to the next speaker. Can you please move to the next slide? Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Eric Cohen. Eric is the Chief AI Officer at Cohen Computer Consulting. Eric, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rudolph, and thank you everyone for coming here today. Just beginning to say that how much I agree with our prior speaker. Everything he said I've been working on for 25 years. Also, not I probably am a little bit older than our prior speaker. I have been working with chatbots for over 30 years. I hold in my hand a Hewlett-Packard 200LX, a Palm-top computer running MS-DOS, Lotus 123, and with which I was running chatbots in the late 1980s and early 1990s to do many of the things that we're talking about today. So in my 20 minutes here, we're going to be talking about some of the AI solutions out there. We began with people typing in the things that they'd heard of: Copilot, Gemini, CA Assistant, which we all can probably benefit from learning more about. Next slide, please. So in my 20 minutes here, again, all the other speakers have done a wonderful job of speaking about what artificial intelligence is. And again, if perhaps at a later time or if you came in late, just giving a little brief run up to the post-chatbot, ChatGPT era, talking about the AI solutions and how they've come along. It is a time of convergence, coalescence, competition, and change that I have not seen in decades of being in this kind of world. So the AI solutions, but even more important to many of us, the traditional tools that have been embracing and building generative AI into their product base. So we've got the generative AI tools doing the tasks that we've done before. We've got the tools that we've been working with that have been embracing generative AI to stay competitive, and then a brief call to action. The little illustration on the bottom is that as we've been talking about artificial intelligence today, the money, the attention has all been on this area of generative AI. December 30, 2022, ChatGPT bringing this to the world, putting the cookies down on the bottom shelf where the kids can get at it. But in our world of finance, accounting, and audit, while generative AI may be an important part, often it is machine learning itself, not generative AI, which is just a subset of deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, algorithms and things to take data and forecast the future, which can be an important part hand in hand. But we've heard the term agents, and so generative AI and agents and large language models as our intercessor may be going off and calling upon machine learning tools. So I'll be probably using the term artificial intelligence. Most of the time I will be meaning generative AI, but our world is a much larger world than that. And AI is from the rings, you throw the rock into the water and the rings go out from the puddle. Generative AI has brought money and attention and regulatory oversight that will be helping all these other issues in helping the profession, the markets, and the world as we move forward. Next slide. Those of you who care about these things in the before ChatGPT era, artificial intelligence has been around for a very long time. People have been writing about it in literature since the early 1800s. The 1960s brought everything from Jaime the Robot, My Living Doll, and HAL 9000 to the current time. So 1940s is where the theory really began with people like Alan Turing and others. In the accounting and finance space, there was an awful lot of work on expert systems. A typical audit firm has a great deal of knowledge, which is mostly concentrated at the top. And how can we bring that down? Better oversight, better teaching, better training, and even having systems do more of the work. And again, the machine learning applications using the algorithms to take the numbers, look at algorithms to try and predict and forecast what's going forward. So in this pre-chatbot era, the pre-ChatGPT, we saw these things begin to work. I'd mentioned chatbots and that I've been using them for 35 years plus. In 1966, 67, a researcher named Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT wrote something called ELIZA, It was not artificial intelligence. It was just programming. But what it did is it interfaced with people. It interacted as if it was a psychotherapist. And very quickly people began to adopt it and embrace it and treat it very much like a human. He wrote a book around 10 years later called On Computer Power and Human Reasoning, where again, back in the 1970s, he said that if we have chatbots and people interacting with them, people will think that they're doing things in a more human-like way. They'll ask them to do things that are completely inappropriate just because it can, should it. And so 50 plus years, we've been working on something that, again, the last 2.5 years has really accelerated. We've seen artificial intelligence in our life using Siri with our Apple products. Watson on the television show Jeopardy beat two of the leading masters of that game show. And so it really began to come more into the public eye. And generative AI, the term was really coined back in 2002, so it's not new, but it is something that people have been using for music and art and other things for quite some time. Next slide. The accounting profession really began looking at this. I was involved with one of the big four firms in their emerging technology area. And again, the big four really began in that 2014-15 timeframe. And again, digitalization, as our prior speaker just spoke about, the emergence of cloud and software as a service, open source deep learning frameworks, new word embedding techniques. This all helped in adopting and developing AI-based solutions, and the big four began using them for looking at contracts and minutes and other text information, fraud and forensics, and really moving to journal entry testing. Products with names like MindBridge began working in the small to medium-sized firms, as well as some of the firms represented here today. A product called BotKeeper was using AI to do underlying bookkeeping. And so there were many providers of off-the-shelf AI-driven accounting solutions. And again, the profession, CPA Canada, the AICPA began putting out documents to help the profession understand what's going on, such as the CPA's Introduction to AI, from algorithms to deep learning, what you need to know. Next slide. So things kept working, people kept playing. You needed to know Python, you needed to know R, you needed to bring in the libraries. We began to see some off-the-shelf software. But again, November 30, 2022 was the introduction of ChatGPT to the world. It brought together artificial intelligence. It brought together chatbots. It brought together the transformation technology from the Google document detention is all you need. The transformation part of GBT that changed the world as we know it. We began with the large language models. We began largely with the you type in text. As has been noted, large language models were not meant to be databases. You couldn't just say, give me all the citations related to airplanes and people getting sued. It would take its training and how different words would go before other words and how often create probabilities, and then it would respond back in a probabilistic manner. This was actually a major decision of theirs not to be deterministic, where you get the same results each time, but probabilistic. And that meant as you asked for information, you weren't getting content from a database, but things were logical and things were coherent, but could be very, very wrong. Very quickly moved to more multimodal, type in text and get lovely images. Moving into audio and video. We'll be talking more about some of those solutions. The ability to give it PDFs and specific documents, very helpful in tax, very helpful when you're dealing with a security regulator or someone else putting out rules in 600-page documents. Because large language models had date cutoffs for their training, the ability to bring in more recent information with search facilities began to be added. And we see search in many of the tools, search just starting to come off in Anthropic's Claude, but search now available, especially if you click a specific link within ChatGPT, within Copilot, with Gemini and others. We've mentioned that the older versions were non-reasoning, that they just looked at their training and how often things were linked up with others and did things based on probability. This moving beyond sophisticated sentence completion to actually looking at things and saying, does this make sense? Reducing the number of undesirable results, which some people call hallucinations, by large amounts. Still not necessarily all the way gone, but improving the results. You've already heard the word agentic, where we let the tools autonomously go off, do things, give them access to other tools on our behalf. They may let us know about the project and the steps they're going to do, or just do it less transparently. But agents is the huge term. This is the year of agents. The big four firms are all coming out with their agentic solutions. Everyone's doing agent. Zoom is doing agent. Everyone's doing agents. And again, deep research, possibly changing search as we know it. You ask it for a topic, it goes up, it finds 50 different resources, assesses them, and comes back with academic type journal articles if you want. So a big change again, just in 2.5 years. But again, because there's so many different options, because things don't work as people like, we've already heard about some of the misconceptions and undesirable results. And that's why it's important to understand the differences of these when we go off to use them. Next slide. So generative AI caught fire. Again, ChatGPT came out. We've heard that Microsoft licensed the underlying GPT models as part of its brand of Copilot. Google competed with formerly Bard, now Gemini. Anthropic, a newer firm, has their Claude. Adobe does it with their tools, with their Firefly world. Amazon builds it into Amazon Web Services. But everyone's out there. Everybody has to be playing here. And everyone wants to build generative AI into their capabilities. Browsers build generative AI in to help you as you're moving along. You open up Edge, it's got Copilot so that you look at something, it can help you understand what's going on. Robotic process automation began to take off at the same time. Products like UiPath and Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism and Power Automate, and they're all building these generative AI functions to help you build the workflows or to help them in carrying out the workflows. Collaboration tools. I use Zoom a lot, and Zoom is building in generative AI as assistance and to pull out tasks and help with workflows and much more. Being able to work with them from the simple text environment to uploads and screen captures and real-time view and real-time voice and scheduling things to happen in the future and just letting things that should say autonomous, but it says automatous. So I guess our prior speaker is not the only person who makes up words. But an important issue is regional issues that, again, what's available to me may not be available to you. The availability of different models, the availability of different services, the availability of different languages, the feature sets, the languages. These are important things to know about. When someone says, I use ChatGPT, that's not one thing. That is a family of things, and they may have very different results based on what they're using. Next slide. So I can only assume that everyone has been exposed to this, but I don't want to make that assumption if you've not seen ChatGPT before or tools like it. This is one interface. This is sort of the typical, you go in, you type something, it responds back, you respond back to it, you go back and forth. Over on the left-hand side, we can see that there's different models that you can choose. It all depends on whether you've got a free version and you're logged in, not logged in. With ChatGPT, there's a $20 a month version, a $200 a month version, enterprise version, a university version. Each one will have different options, and you can choose the right tool for the right job. On our next slide, we'll talk about why you might want to choose 4.0 versus 4.5. And by the way, 4.1 is more enhanced than 4.5, and it's all very confusing on how they're naming these things. That's part of the fun that we have moving forward. Next slide. A gentleman on LinkedIn who I learn a lot from, his name is Peter Gostev. He put together this attempt to help people understand ChatGPT. There are different models, you see them on the left-hand side. There are different options, such as being able to perform that deep research, or do autonomous work with the operator, or speak to it with voice, or create videos with Sora. Up at the top, different types of accounts, and this is a little bit aged. This is as of March 4th. I gave you links so that you can get more up-to-date content. Will it take attachments? Will it do advanced data analytics? Will it set up a separate window called a canvas where you can interactively type and work with the tool? Does it have search? So again, the model that you choose, the subscription that you have, the place that you're at will all determine which fact you can have at the same time. And again, this is a fun slide, but we can't go into it much in our limited time. Next slide. Those of you who haven't seen Claude, and again, Anthropic is not as well known as Google or Meta or Microsoft or even OpenAI, but Claude is one that I really like. It works very well with people. It has been very advanced with math. It has a lot of great features. And again, I'll be showing you just some of the unique selling propositions of each as we move along. Next slide. And Gemini, this is Google's offering, and Gemini is a product category, if you will. You can go to Gemini through gemini.google.com. You can go to Gemini through AI Studio. You can go through Gemini in many different ways. I like this one. If you're a little more technical, over on the right-hand side, it sort of opens up the top of the world to let you see the workings on the inside in choosing models and choosing how accurate you want it to be or how creative. Do you want it to override security features and things? So just many different options to these, but one view of Gemini and the many great things that it does. Next slide. So in terms of powering up finance, again, here are what I think are some of the key issues. ChatGPT is the gold standard. There are free and for-fee accounts. The different models that I showed specialized in speed and creativity and reasoning. Many of them have that Canvas feature for word processing and coding, but Gemini last week, and the slides are a little old, Gemini just added the same feature of Canvas. Meta within the last 3 days just added Canvas, a separate area where you can edit in real time, working outside of the thread, word processing and coding. We've seen that the models don't all share the same features. Sam Altman, the head of the group, mentioned that the next version, or one of the next versions, GPT-5, is going to be a single front end that'll choose the right model for you. But there are web interfaces, desktop, mobile, as well as being able to incorporate this in your program with an API. Next slide. Microsoft, again, they've licensed the GPT stuff from OpenAI, but Copilot is part of their whole branding. Yes, you can go to copilot.microsoft.com, but there's Copilot for Finance, there's Copilot for Dynamics 365, there's Copilot taking over. Microsoft Office is being deprecated as a term, so there's Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, but Microsoft, lots of great functions. I use it extensively when I look at new documents from the security regulator. It makes it very easy to find 600-page PDFs and find what you need inside. Google is the Mac truck of the Gen AI tools. Many different names. Notebook LM is a fantastic tool for working with lots of different documents, Illuminate more academically oriented, data analytics with the data science agent, but huge amounts of data. You can put in 2 hours of video and have these models work with them, which others can't. But again, just in the last week, they had their big Google conference and adding Canvas and moving audio overviews in different products. And next slide, and I can see absolutely I need to be moving along here. Next slide. Notebook LM, if you have not played with this tool, the documents that you put in are supposed to be protected unless you say that there's a problem. It will then bring them together, summarize, let you work with your own documents. It will create a podcast about them. It will create a mind map about them. A fantastic tool for teaching and training and working on projects. Next slide. I mentioned Claude is the scrappy outsider. Meta, they've just been updating that from the YouTube folks. Models from DeepSeek and Qwen from China, the XGrok, open source alternatives. And if you want to keep up with what's the best tool of the time, Over on the right-hand side, there's the Chatbot Arena, and this is a user environment where people crowdsource to let you know the best model at the time. Unfortunately, the people at Meta came out with something called Llama 4. It reached the top, but they found out that they cheated to fine-tune it for how people might work, and they've received some downvotes for that. Let's keep moving quick here, as I know my time is just about up. There are search platforms like Perplexity. There's video platforms. HeyGen is great for doing those avatars. Runway for video. You want to do music, there's Suno and Udio, and just about anything you want to learn about. You want to learn how to do sentiment analysis before you do a board report. There's something for that in Hugging Face. Next slide. The ability to work with people from different languages with your content. You want to create a little podcast, feed it to 11 Labs, feed it to chatgpt.fm, and it can change the language. It can get rid of all the ums and uhs. Fantastic stuff going on. Next slide. So, as you've already heard, people using this to draft correspondence, to take documents from the security regulator, the audit regulator, take the IASB latest frameworks and summarize them and communicate them. Look at websites and have them explain them to you. Compare versions of documents, create images, translate content. Next slide. But the tools that we use today, it's part of the convergence. Microsoft had said that we are building agents into Office. We're not going to call it Office anymore. We're going to call it Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. We're going to have a studio where you're going to build your own. You're not going to have to know the difference between HLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, and XLOOKUP anymore. It'll just do it for you in Excel, and if it can't do it, it'll write Python programs for you. Every ERP vendor is building it in. Joule from SAP, and they're building in a wizard-led agent builders. Adobe is building it in. Next slide. If you do analytics, then you may be using tools like Alteryx or Tableau. Well, now all the AI tools, there's ChatGPT Advanced Analytics, there's Claude Analytics. Next slide. Gemini recently released their data science agent that gives you access to their great big computers and uses Gemini to make wizard-led analytics available to you. Fantastic stuff. Next slide. Next slide. And we'll just keep going through this. You'll see how I went in. I did some very easy analytics, pulling out information. Next slide. There we go. Going past some slides in ChatGPT here. Next slide. In the Copilot world, DeepSeek, all of them now letting you do fantastic charting and graphing and analytics. Will it replace your analytics tools? We'll see. Next slide. So research tools, Zoom, you name it, it's all converging. As our prior speaker said, your applications, the collaboration, the platform, they're all coming together, converging, coalescing. Maybe it'll lead to the singularity, maybe not. Next slide. All hooking us together to it. Here's the hooking us together. You can promote AI in your organizations. You can limit it. What you can't do is ignore it. The choices will be dynamic, even between handing in these slides and now. Major changes to OpenAI, ChatGPT, major changes to Gemini, major changes to Meta. The feature sets and capabilities change incredibly rapidly. So keeping people up, understanding the vital issues that you've heard, like confidentiality and privacy, using tools like LlamaFile, GPT for all sorts of ways to run them on your own machines. But again, I'm very thankful to Irba for bringing us together so that we can collaborate and communicate. And again, if nothing else, head to the chatbot arena to see what people say are the greatest tools at the time. Let me turn this back if we have time. I know I kept going. If we have time for a question here. There's those concentric rings that I mentioned.
Thank you very much, Eric. I just have one question. We'll quickly go through that question and then we jump over to the next presenter.
Thank you.
Eric, Sadie asked a question at the beginning of this webinar. She asked, what are the most popular tools, AI tools that are used by finance professionals. And when I look at the list that you've shared with us, I mean, what we are currently using and what we are familiar with is just a fraction of what you've shared with us. So also during your presentation, I can see this AI applications are developing and evolving at such a rapid pace. To follow up and keep up with these developments as a professional or as a student, which platforms do you recommend that I follow?
Well, that's a fantastic question, and I'm sure someday someone's going to create some generative AI tools that are going to do a much better job of this. And things change so quickly. You go to like the Gemini blog or the Copilot blog, and it's not up to date. You try and track Sam Altman on Twitter, and he doesn't have everything. You look at Google just had their big conference, and you get news out of that. The way that I try and keep up with these the most is, number one, I bring each one of these things up every day, because they'll often say, here's the things that have just changed in the system so that you can know what's going on. I go to Reddit and the OpenAI, Gemini, DeepSeek, and other groups. People go there and say, I just saw this, and this is important. I gave you Peter Gosnev's LinkedIn, tracking people like Peter, Ethan Mollick, myself, Dan Shorstein. There's some great LinkedIn people. These are people who just live and breathe this stuff to try and keep up. So it is a huge task to try and keep up. And again, the tools vendors, things change so quickly that even the tools vendor's own site doesn't have the latest news, but we do the best we can. So great question. And I wish I had a better answer for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. That was very insightful. In the interest of time, we're going to move to the next presenter. The next presenter is Howard Snoeman. Howard is the head of legal and ethics at Discovery Health Medical Scheme. And Howard also happens to be a member of our committee for auditor ethics. Over to you, Howard.
Thanks, Rudolph. Just to contextualize my presentation, it's nothing like what you've heard to date so far, I can assure you. I'm not an auditor. I'm also not a tech expert at all. As Rudolph alluded to, I am an attorney working at a large medical scheme, but my presentation comes from the lens of the risks and benefits of using AI in various situations. And we're going to get into some detail about that. Next slide. So I guess it's AI is the risk that we speak about in AI use. It goes to the old adage about if there's garbage in, garbage will come out. The technology can sometimes convince people to surrender their good judgment and agree with incorrect conclusions. The technology can assist greatly, but that ought not to mean that you trust it without question. The moment that you surrender your good judgment, I think there could be questions of recklessness and negligence that arise depending how things may go wrong. Next slide. Next slide. So AI is very appropriate and responsible to use in a couple of instances. So particularly where it's given objective criteria to assess, it's proven extremely reliable at a fraction of the time that it would normally take human beings to complete that same task. It's also a very practical tool to assist with the reviewing, especially with the number of ideas is likely to, when the number of ideas is likely to be cognitively overloading for humans to be done all at once. So this is where I think it was Nivellen earlier spoke about the possibility of doing a 100% audit. One day that may well be possible where AI can actually give sufficient assurance about 100% of that which the audit relates to, provided that there are objective criteria that are being assessed. It's not making subjective judgments. Next slide. Okay, so this again goes to practical uses of AI. So within the Discovery Health space, and I must just pause there. I'm not speaking on behalf of Discovery, the entity. I'm speaking on behalf of a humble attorney who just happens to work a little bit in the space. But within the Discovery Health space, there is an AI program called Affinity Matching. Now, what happens is when you are a Discovery Health member and you phone into the call center, the system recognizes certain data metrics about you, your personality, your age, your health conditions, and any other variety of metrics that are relevant. And it matches you with a call center agent who is most likely to gel with your personality. Often when people are phoning in, sometimes they're upset a claim hasn't been paid, or why is this authorization taking longer than it ought to, etc. And when you speak to someone who you gel with better, that interaction tends to go far better than what it would be if the case you can imagine an 85-year-old person, quite conservative, phoning and speaking to a Gen Z call center agent who they're just talking different languages. So this affinity matching program has proved remarkably useful. Next slide. In contract and litigation analysis, law firms often use a form of AI to analyze and do, I suppose, a plethora of documentation, partly for their own databases and also for discovery purposes. When I say discovery in that context, discovery is a process in litigation where each side provides the documentation that they're going to be relying on in litigation. Now, in many litigious matters, that discovery process can encompass thousands of documents, hundreds of thousands of pages, perhaps going into the millions of pages. Now, that's when we talk about cognitive overload. If one person or even a team of people had to go through that pile of documents, or even if they had to do it electronically, they cannot, in simple terms, they cannot comprehend everything that's there. But using AI tools responsibly, one can summarize what is there, one can categorize what is there, and do so safely. Next slide. Again, to use another discovery example, in the forensics department, there's a bank of claims. You can imagine that in a business that processes 55 million claims in a given year, and going back several years before that, the claims from a given provider, from a given speciality, etc., form part of a globular record. And there's peer groups. So, for example, a ophthalmic surgeon will have his own peer group, an orthopedic surgeon will have their own group, an oncologist will have their own group, etc. And patterns will emerge over time. Now, again, it's very difficult for individual people to analyze those patterns one by one by one, but an AI system can and does very quickly, very easily, and very accurately. And depending on the risk scores that are generated from the analysis of those patterns, it will then either trigger or not trigger an actual investigation which involves people. And again, it's found that the red flags that are triggered through the system are remarkably accurate because they are assessing objective criteria. Next slide. I thought this was an incredibly useful quote to delve into. And it comes specific to the paradigm of AI in healthcare. It says, integrating AI into healthcare holds excellent potential for improving disease diagnosis, treatment selection, and clinical laboratory testing. AI tools can leverage large data sets and identify patterns to surpass human performance in several healthcare aspects. AI offers increased accuracy, reduced costs, and time savings while minimizing human errors. It can revolutionize personalized medicine, optimized medication dosages, enhanced population health management, establish guidelines, provide virtual health assistance, support mental health care, improve patient education, and influence patient-physician trust. These are phenomenal benefits to the use of AI in healthcare. But of course, it's not all cupcakes and roses. Next slide. Next slide. So some useful stats that I found quite interesting is in the US, overall 39.5% of US adults engage in generative AI or use generative AI regularly. 10.9% said they used it every day in the preceding week, and 21.1% used it at least once in the preceding week. And for work purposes, 28.1% of Americans use generative AI, of which 10.6 used it every day in the preceding week, and 13.6 used it at least once in the preceding week. Now, that's not necessarily anything to be alarmed at yet, because we don't know what industries all of these people are in. But depending on the industry and depending on what their job specifications are, it may or may not be appropriate. Next slide. So as we're going to unpack in further detail in a few minutes' time, inappropriately high trust levels in AI reduces the oversight of the product ultimately generated. And that speaks to surrendering control and trust to the system. The quote there, which again I found remarkably pertinent, is that while generative AI can improve worker efficiency, it can inhibit critical engagement with work and can potentially lead to long-term over-reliance on the tool and diminished skill for independent problem solving. Now, again, depending on the nature of work that one is engaged with, that becomes either more or less of a problem. If you are a law firm, that's a tremendous problem. If your problem-solving skills, your data analytics skills are reduced over time, you become less effective as an attorney. If you are an actuary, of course, you never want to blunt any of your skills, but simply just working with numbers, you are already so sharp at that point that this can allow you to just work with bigger and better problem-solving equations. So it really does depend on what you do and how you do it to contextualize whether the use of generative AI is problematic in certain fields. One certainly can't be generalizing. Next slide. So here we talk about hallucinations. And as you've heard in prior presentations, AI does have the propensity from time to time to hallucinate, to create these alternative realities. And that is when they perceive patterns or objects that are non-existent or imperceptible to human observers, producing meaningless or entirely inaccurate results. You heard, I think it was Lucian, speak previously in the Mavundla judgment about case law, which was hallucinated. And we're going to be unpacking more of that in a few moments' time. That's where, again, the AI system will trawl through thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of cases from around the world, perhaps, or if you narrow it down, obviously less to a particular locality, and then harness certain aspects, certain key features of the judgments, and it'll homologate that into what it perceives to be the next iteration, the improved version of what it has found over time. Now, in some industries, that might be perfectly appropriate. Certainly in law, when you're talking about case law and you're doing research and the quality of your arguments is going to be determined by the nature of the case law that you can cite, it's highly inappropriate. Next slide. AI hallucinations in healthcare is one that particularly interests me, again, just because of where I come from. So what we've seen in the overseas examples is that an AI system incorrectly flagged benign nodules, so growths, as being malignant in 12% of cases that were duly reviewed, leading to unnecessary surgical interventions. So imagine that not only from the aspect of cost, which is what would concern a healthcare insurer like ourselves, but also from the aspect of the trauma to the patient. Imagine 12% of people that were diagnosed through this latest and greatest new technology having their surgery being completely unnecessary and being convinced themselves that they had a life-threatening disease when they didn't. There were other instances where language-based AI models fabricated entire patient summaries, including non-existent symptoms and treatment. Now, that becomes important when you're looking at population health, when you're doing actuarial assessments and budgets for healthcare insurers. You've got to know how many people you've got with diabetes, how many people you've got with cancer, what's the average age of your cancer patients, etc. At what age do cancer patients typically get diagnosed? You can't have that information fabricated or hallucinated. And then lastly, an AI-powered drug interaction checker mistakenly identified false interactions, causing clinicians to avoid effective drug combinations unnecessarily. And that could be life-threatening as well. If you've got drugs 1, 2, and 3, which can and should be used together almost in concert, and to the extent that your AI system has fabricated an adverse drug interaction, you're now going to stop using it. The patient's not going to benefit to the same extent that they would have. Perhaps life expectancy is shortened, perhaps quality of life is lessened, and the system loses. So it's the ecosystem loses. So again, it's not without risk, it's not without fault, but again, one certainly doesn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are tremendous benefits, as I keep on saying, in harnessing AI responsibly. Next slide. And this is just more towards how hallucinations can erode trust. Next slide. Right. So we've heard about the Mavunda judgment locally. These are some international cases where AI has drawn the ire of the presiding judge. So in the Matter versus Avianca case in New York, lawyers submitted a brief containing fake extracts and case citations. And the brief was researched using ChatGPT. The lawyer was unaware that ChatGPT could hallucinate. I mean, shame. This is obviously in the very early days when, they were trialing it for the first time, and failed to check that the cases actually existed. Now here, again, this is the other problem, is that when you are paying for professional services, would you expect, you may expect and you may be comforted by the fact that your professional advisor, be they a doctor, lawyer, whatever the case may be, has used AI. But you also expect, and this is what you're paying for, you expect them to validate that which was generated by the AI system. Otherwise, why are you paying for them? With respect, you may as well just have used the AI system yourself and represented yourself in court. But in any event, the consequences were disastrous. So as soon as this was uncovered, the court dismissed the client's case, sanctioned the lawyers for acting in bad faith, fined them and their firm, and exposed their actions to public scrutiny. Next slide. In Zhang versus Chen, which was a divorce case in Canada, the attorney had to personally compensate her client's ex-wife and the lawyers for the time spent it took to learn the cases that she hoped to cite, but were actually conjured up by ChatGPT. And again, the judge actually says that generative AI is still no substitute for professional expertise, and that the justice system requires of lawyers. Competence in the selection and use of any technology tools, including those powered by AI, is critical. So again, he's falling short of saying, thou shalt not use AI. He does say, you take responsibility for what you put before me in my court, and that's critical. Next slide. In Coles and Franson versus Ellison and Larson, in Minnesota. This is the most remarkable and ironic case imaginable. The expert witness, Professor Hancock, used AI to draft his declaration, which dealt with matters such as AI and deepfakes. His own use of AI regrettably generated fake citations and non-existent academic articles. And the judge in his ruling stated that when attorneys and experts abdicate their independent judgment and critical thinking skills in favor of ready-made AI-generated answers, the quality of our legal profession and the court's processes suffer. Next slide. But despite this, according to Thomson Reuters, 63% of US lawyers last year said that they used AI for work, and 12% said they used it regularly. Next slide. So there was a question earlier, I think it was in the first session, about how have regulators reacted to the use of AI in different industries. So here's some reactions of regulators in the legal industry from around the world. So we see in several US state bars and courts have issued guidance, opinions, and orders on generative AI use, ranging from responsible adoption to an outright ban. So that depends on which state in the US that you're in. Law societies in the UK and British Columbia and Canada, as well as the courts of New Zealand, have developed guidelines. In Australia, the New South Wales Bar Association has a generative AI guide for barristers, and the Law Society of New South Wales and the Law Institute of Victoria and Queensland have released articles on responsible use in line with solicitors' conduct rules. Now, that's important because all these articles and guidelines are non-binding. But to the extent that you are found to have acted irresponsibly because you haven't followed that particular guideline, then again, there can be questions about recklessness, negligence, etc. Finally, the Supreme Court of New South Wales issued a practice note on the use of generative AI, which prohibits its use for the generation of affidavits and expert reports. Now, there again, that would make sense because the whole purpose of an affidavit is to say what falls within your personal knowledge and expertise. Next slide. So now to get to the next generation of AI as it is being used practically, and this is something that we're particularly proud of within the Discovery realm. It's called Personal Health Pathways. It's a disease management program in terms of which the membership obviously has to consent. You'll get a notification on the app. Do you consent to be part of this Personal Health Pathways program? And we would obviously want everybody to say yes. But once you do consent, the health data that has been built up over the years of your membership is duly analyzed. The risks associated with you as an individual are then quantified, and it prompts you to perform next best actions. Now, these next best actions are based primarily on what we know, as well as what we don't know. So, for instance, there may be members where we have very little data because they don't go to the doctor much. They haven't had a health check. They perhaps don't consult with specialists much, etc. They don't go for checkups. They don't exercise much at the gym, or they don't track their exercise at least with a smart device. Not to say that they don't exercise, but we don't know about it. So for them, it's important and it's critical that we start getting as much information as possible. The completion of each one of these next best action leads to a reward, an incentive, and you'll see the incentive. If you complete this next best action, you qualify for X. And the stratification of those rewards is incredibly important, because if you take two different people, one who exercises very vigorously and regularly and has done so for years, and one who doesn't, one who's a couch potato, you cannot reward them in the same fashion for going to exercise. The person like me who exercises religiously doesn't need the incentive. I'm going to go exercise anyway, incentive or no incentive. The person who has never exercised and almost has a phobia of exercising, you need to incentivize them substantially. And you need to find the right sweet spot, because it might be 100 Rand, it might be 200 Rand, it might be 500 Rands worth of reward. But at a certain point, it may be enough to induce them to act and to change their behavior. The concept behind this entire program is that with enough behavior change, forming habits, then the risk of non-communicable diseases drops dramatically. That includes heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, some cancers, etc. And the rewards, as I said, are obviously tailored per member and the risks associated with each one of those members. So that depends on age, gender, how many chronic conditions you may have, your exercise, and any other data stream that we have about you. Next slide. So this program launched to 2.1 million adult members or beneficiaries in January this year. And we've already started to see incredible results in the sense that there's dramatically more screenings, which by rights pick up more chronic conditions earlier in the process, when they are cheaper to treat than when they are detected far later. They pick up far more serious diseases earlier when they can be resolved in their entirety, as opposed to simply mitigating the effects. A perfect example is someone who went for their screenings. There was something that was slightly out of kilter. They went for a follow-up, again, prompted after the screening, your next best action was to say, this particular reading was out of range. Please go consult a specialist in this field. They duly did so. And cancer was detected at its earliest possible point of detection. It would probably have been there latently for a year or two had they not taken this step. They were able to deal with it comprehensively, and for all intents and purposes, their risk from that cancer has been entirely mitigated. I mean, that's a phenomenal success. That's a life-changing consequence from simply motivating an AI system, motivating a person to change their behavior in the right way and prompting them to know what triggers to pull and what not to. Next slide. And that would be me. I hope I didn't rush through everything too quickly, but happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Howard. It looks like we're gonna run out of time, so we're not gonna have a session for Q&A. But if there are comments or questions in the chat box, please feel free to respond to those questions. And I'm glad that you gave us a balanced view of emerging technology, especially artificial intelligence and the benefits and the risks. Our next speaker will be Jeremy Justin. Jeremy is the Chief Risk Officer and the Vice President at the Canadian Public Accountability Board, the CPAB. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Rudolph, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. And in addition to the work that I do at CPAB, also have the privilege of leading IFIAR, the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators Technology Task Force, and so have been able to hear a number of items at the international level as far as what audit regulators are doing. And so really thankful to be part of this session. There's been a lot of great speakers and a lot of areas that I think are very common in the work that we've all been doing. And I think this is really valuable to have a session like this because it brings together all of the different stakeholders and people within the ecosystem, whether it's auditors or regulators or lawyers, accountants, because in order to effectively look at technology appropriately in the audit, it's really going to depend on everyone working together on this one. And so I think really important for us to raise awareness and have these types of discussions. You know, when I think about some goals that we have as regulators, and we'll provide some views from an audit regulator today, you know, we're really looking at trying to make sure we're upskilling our teams, making sure we're understanding the evolution, the changes that are happening, what that means from changes to the audit, but also means changes that we need to be making ourselves and looking at different approaches to that. And so I think having these conversations is really useful, and thinking about where we can all continue to work together and interact, I think is really important. Number of key themes that have come up today include, you know, adaptability and the use of agents and agility. And so I think try to cover a couple of these things in discussions today. So if we move on to the next slide, one of the things that I just wanted to share a little bit was from a international perspective, IFIAR, which coordinates the work of a number of sharing of information across different audit regulators around the world, shared a paper on technology at the beginning of or the end of March. And this was really trying to pull together some of the observations we had from the activities that we've been doing over the last year in looking at the impact of technology in the audit. And I thought I'd share some of the key messages in areas that we've been thinking about as audit regulators. And a lot of this really relates to some of the information that's already been shared today. So if I start with the first one of the key areas that we think is incredibly important, and Eric did a great job in summarizing some of all the different options and choices and items that are available out there right now. One of the areas, and this kind of takes the first two key areas that we think are important, is there's so many different options available and so many different tools that audit firms could be using. I think the first one that we think is the most important is, you know, having an evaluation of which ones have the biggest impact from an audit quality perspective, and having analysis and understanding how many engagement teams are using it, how frequently it's being used by engagement teams, and what the real impact this is having from an audit quality perspective. And so I think that's a really important area because of the different choices available. The second key theme was really around, when looking at all the different available tools, we've noticed that some of the larger firms have a really large number of tools in some cases that are available for engagement teams to use. You know, I think it's really important to be prioritizing, giving more information to audit teams around, you know, which ones have the biggest impact on audit quality, and really focusing efforts on using those ones, because I think the impact really should be on, you know, what are the areas that have the biggest impact on audit quality. The third area, and this is one that we've been kind of a constant theme that we've been talking about already in the sessions today, is a lot around looking at appropriate governance and oversight of the technologies that use AI or generative AI in the audit. We're hearing a lot of conversations around the good and the bad of many of these generative AI models. And so having an audit firm that builds governance and oversight into that, to making sure that these the situations when these tools should be used, how to address issues like bias, confidentiality of information, all of those key areas is really important to be outlined really well because of the public interest requirements of an audit firm, the reputational issues that could come up if there are issues or challenges. I think we've heard so many great examples of areas where things can go wrong, but there are so many benefits. And so trying to get a real benefit, a balance of which are the areas that can be addressed at the outset as firms are looking at trying to use that. The last one is really around, ensuring audit professionals are in control of the technology and retain responsibility for judgments made on the audit. Again, a lot of the key themes that were raised from a legal perspective are very similar to an audit. The auditor has a lot of knowledge, and audit partners, audit managers, senior managers have a lot of knowledge that's built up over time. And really important that professional judgment, professional skepticism is retained and made really continues to be an important part of the audit. And so ensuring that how this technology is used is considering kind of building in some areas to make sure that judgment and skepticism is retained. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in the next slide, if we can move to the next slide now. So we think about the area of, the audit professional being in control of the technology. There's a number of areas that we've been thinking about. The first one is around human-led, the audit being human-led, and very interested in the conversation that we've been having today, but also have been hearing quite a bit more around the use of AI agents. And I think that's an area that I think is going to be important to reconcile the differences between when are the areas that the human should be leading, the audit team should be leading and determining the strategy and the approach from an audit perspective, but using an AI agent or using any of these different Gen AI tools to be able to support the auditor. I think the areas that will become more interesting for us to be working through is situations where the AI agent is making decisions, is proceeding to making judgments without intervention from the audit partner or the audit team. I think that's going to be an incredibly important area to be able to work through what situations is that okay and what situations is that not okay. Second area is around effective training programs. So important in order to have effective programs that both provide base level of knowledge and understanding of what these tools are meant to do, but more specific where tools are made available to engagement teams. How should this be used? What are situations when this should be used, when it would be appropriate to use the tool? When would it not be appropriate to use the tool? And having effective training and ability to practice and experiment with the tools and thinking about what are the best cases to be using it, which are the cases not to be using it. Supervision and oversight, certainly have already emphasized that a couple times earlier today. Having that supervision and oversight, having more senior members that have built up that professional skepticism and judgment to oversee all of the work that's being done, understand where more challenge could be required, where AI tools may have been used either not enough or have been used too much. So having those experienced individuals that can go through and think about challenging the approach that's being taken. The fourth area is one that I think is really important as we look at the approaches that audit firms are taking to tools that are being used in the audit. Many of the audit firms are required, if you're following the international system on standard on quality management, ISQM1, as part of the technological resources, the firms will have a process to look at a tool before it's being certified to be used, to make sure that it's fit for use, to make sure it's protecting confidentiality, to make sure it's coming to the right conclusions, and a lot of back testing that's done in a lot of cases to make sure that it's coming to the right processes and it's designed effectively. One question that we've been asking, and I think it's important as we see the pace of change right now, is historically when those tools have been developed, those tools have been tested and certified at the beginning before they've been used as it's being developed. But where the underlying large language model or other underlying logic continues to change in an AI-based tool, how often should those tools be tested and recertified? And is that a continuous process? Is this a process that changes over time? And I think this is something that may lead to changes in processes and certifying and making sure that these tools are fit for use and should be used appropriately. And the last one is one that I think is really important as we think about transparency around how often AI is being used and what situations AI is being used. Certainly hearing as we think about how these tools become more integrated in the daily use that we have and almost everything that we do, thinking about what are the situations where individuals who are reviewing an audit file, whether it's a manager or a senior manager or other individuals within the audit team that are reviewing information that was prepared, how do you have transparency so that individuals that are reviewing that information know that AI was used in preparation of some or all of that information? Should that be transparent so that individuals can take a different look at it in some cases if they want to test the references or look at whether the information is accurate or not? How does that change if the information was provided by a client from a finance function where it was prepared from an AI perspective? And when you go through different levels of review, including internal reviews for quality within an audit firm, should that be transparent as far as clarity that was being used from an AI perspective, that the information was prepared using AI? And similarly, when there's external reviews from audit regulators, how much transparency is provided around where AI was used in the preparation of any of these documents? I think these are all important areas that as we think about the quick moving areas within this, that these are things that need to be considered and worked through as far as the right approaches in these areas. If we move on to the next slide, this is one area that we've also been thinking about from a regulatory perspective, is the use of AI and Gen AI in the financial reporting processes. We've already heard some examples where AI can be used by companies, in a lot of cases where companies are piloting or trying to think about how AI can be used within their processes. What I did want to add was that I think this is an evolving area where, as we think about risks that this may come about if financial reporting finance is being able to use this information. What kind of work does the auditor need to do as far as reliability, accuracy of the information, explainability? Does there need to be an audit trail from an AI perspective as far as how that information was created? Is that information auditable? A more recent area that we've been talking about is what impact this has on the internal controls within a company, because it's one thing for an auditor to be adapting the approach as far as testing the reliability of information that they're receiving and adapting the approaches for that, but also where AI is being used more fundamentally within a company, how does that change the system of internal controls? And a real significant changes as far as use of internal controls, and how does the auditor begin to think about how to test those internal controls? Does that entirely change internal controls? And I think an area that's often being talked about and starting to consider is, will auditors need to have AI tools that will test the AI tools that are being used by the company? And similarly, as we get to thinking about it from regulator perspective, will regulators need to have AI tools that are testing the models that are being used by companies and by auditors? And so thinking about where does that begin and where does that stop as far as the continued use of AI. And so these are some of the key areas. And I think as we move into an area where there's more use of AI agents and starting to think about agentic AI, I think it's going to continue to change a lot of the key areas that we're thinking about. When I think about some of the next steps from our perspective, from audit regulators, I think it's really important to continue to have conversations at both at local levels, but also at the international levels around how this technology is changing, where this is moving, the use of where the AI is moving as far as how companies are preparing information, how auditors are using that, but then also how regulators are using AI, and really important to have a continued dialogue as a group to make sure that all the parties are remaining aligned and continuing to be up to date. And so I think really important to have sessions like these and other sessions that continue to have those types of discussions. And so I don't know if I'll turn it back to Rudolf. Those are some of the key areas that I wanted to cover, but look forward to any questions or comments that come up.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Jeremy. It was truly insightful. My question is about when you talk about the certification of tools by firms. Let's say, especially with the bigger and the large network firms, where you have AI applications that are developed by their global offices and they're then rolled out to the entire network for deployment. What advice do you have for local firms that are adopting AI applications that are developed by their global offices for use at the local level?
Yeah, thanks, Rudolf. And that's a question that has been a lot of conversations that we've been having, both within Canada, but also at the global level, because as you mentioned, a number of the recent AI tools are being controlled for the larger firms, development happening at the global level. And the important area when you think about the system of quality management for an audit firm, the evaluation has to be done at a local level. And I think one of the areas that we've been hearing as far as good practices coming up is really thinking about the area of network resources within ISQM1, in that the network that is preparing those tools or preparing guidance or other areas, providing that information to each of the local networks to be able to ensure that they understand how those programs were created, what kind of testing was done in order to look at the accuracy and the fit for purpose of those tools, and providing that information to local firm and having the local firm consider that information, decide whether that's complete or whether there's additional information that the local firm needs to do as far as supplementing that to help them to come up with a conclusion that they think is appropriate, that the systems are appropriate for use for their purposes.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. That's truly helpful, especially for our local firms that will be adopting AI applications that are developed by their global offices. And also throughout the event, if I can summarize the whole event, I can say the speakers have been talking about the capabilities of artificial intelligence, and they were also talking about the risks that come with the growing use of artificial intelligence, both in financial reporting and in auditing. So if I can ask you a question, Jeremy, how would you advise audit regulators across the world to ensure that they welcome these advancements and development in the use of technology, while at the same time be mindful of compromises that they may have on audit quality?
Yeah, thanks. And this is something that is going on pretty regularly, just as recently as Imre noted with the in his introduction. We just recently had a meeting of the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators last week, and we did have the opportunity to have a panel where we talked about AI and the use of technology and how that's changing, and gave us the opportunity to hear from the global audit firms as far as how where they see things moving, and some of the challenges that they see, but also the opportunities, and then gave us a chance as regulators to talk about how we may be approaching that, what we are doing from our perspectives. And so much of this to me is all about communication, connecting together, having regular conversations and discussions at so many different levels to understand the opportunities and where technology can be used, but also thinking about the risks and how do we as a collective group address those risks. And so I think it's probably moved a lot more away from items that can be addressed individually at a individual country level, because we are so integrated together from a world perspective to make sure that we can regionally and globally be able to share information and work together, because this is something that as we've heard today, so many of the common areas across different professions, across different areas. I think it's an area that we could all collectively learn from each other and continually do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. That brings us to the end of the webinar. So I would like to thank all the speakers that shared with us their insights and for being kind with all this information. We have shared the details in the registration link. You can go on that link and have a look at if you still wanna look up on our speakers. But now I'd also like to thank you for being with us throughout and for your active participation. And in closing, I'll be handing over to Sadia. Back to you, Sadia.
Very pleasant. I have the very pleasant job of thanking everyone for being part of this presentation, and for the participants. We still have 480 people on the call, and to stay on for 3.5 hours, that's a real take. So we really appreciate your time. But our phenomenal presenters, we had 8 individuals who gave us deep insight into the world of AI. Sean and Kavi for their demo on the EY LLM, Jason, who reminded us to take an active role and the importance of mindset, Lucian, and the update on the AI laws, privacy, permission, professional ethics, and of course that case study about the trainee accountant using AI, but the principal being held accountable. And that might be a lesson that we should think about when we come to the world of finance as well. Devlin blew our minds with his crystal ball and changed the definition of AQ from audit quality to adaptability quotient, talking about real-time assurance and maximum assurance. Eric helped us navigate the different AI tools. The detailed slide deck will also be helpful. Even if you went on the webinar, it will be provided and you can walk through each option. I think that will be a fascinating read for if you try to work out which AI tools do what. How it provide insights into the other side, how an entity uses AI, and introduce the word hallucinations. So the case studies were also very interesting. And of course, Jeremy brought us all back to this regulatory perspective and the call for the key factors that audit firms need to consider. He also reminded us of ISQAM and how we should be looking at a certification of AI tools, but also the pace of change and the call for conversation. And I really appreciated each individual that has taken their time to be part of this presentation. But what we can promise you is that as we close out, we still owe you a few things. So after this, we will be releasing a copy of the recording. The slide decks will be shared, and in the slide decks, you'll be able to find contact details for all our presenters if you would like to contact them. What we also do is we do a summary document after a presentation, and this would be released. And what we would like to see in the future as we work through the webinars is to continue to engage with us on our LinkedIn accounts, do share these recordings and the slides with individuals that may have not been on the call so that we can get the message out there and they can benefit from the presentation as well. I see that there's lots of messages on the chat, and we really appreciate everyone that has been on the call. With that, I will call the event to an end. Thank you so much.